Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are Group 3. Today's lesson is about dynamic capability, and the paper we used as our material today is Speed, Stealth, and Selective Attack: How Small Firms Differ from Large Firms in Competitive Behavior. This study explored the basic but unanswered question of how relatively small firm within a given industry should act and react to prosper in a competitive arena through two related questions. How do small firms differ from their large rivals in their competitive behaviors? Do the competitive behaviors associated with good business performance differ for small and large firms? A firm can be considered small in two different but related ways, in terms of sheer organizational size, or in terms of its industry market share. Large size has been seen as giving a firm such advantages as economies of scale, experience, brand name recognition, and market power. Smallness has been credited with increasing flexibility in production, price, with enhancing speed, and risk-seeking behavior. Therefore, the small firms in an industry can be as successful as their large rivals. However, their success is determined mainly by the competitive strategies they employ, and different strategies are required for small firms to compete effectively against their larger rivals in an industry. In reality, competition is a dynamic process by which market participants engage each other through a series of moves and counter-moves. It is important to move the level of analysis to the basic building blocks of competitive strategy: actions and responses. The action-response dyad is theoretically consequential because it is at this level that actual competitive engagement occurs, where competitors enact their strategies, secure new customers, test their opponents' mettle and capabilities, defend their reputations, and signal their toughness. An action is defined as a specific and detectable competitive move initiated by a firm. It includes propensity for action and action execution speed. A response is a specific and detectable counter-move prompted by an initial action that a firm takes to defend or improve its share or profit position in its industry. This paper examined the following aspects of competitive responses: responsiveness, response announce speed, response execution speed. First, we talk about competitive actions. Propensity for action equals total number of actions divided by total number of routes in the same year. Hypothesis 1a. Small firms will show a greater propensity for action than their large rivals. Action execution speed equal average amount of time that a firm spent to execute an announced action. Hypothesis 1b. Small firms will execute actions faster than large firms. Action visibility equal the average amount of information available about a competitive action that a firm initiated. Hypothesis 1c. Competitive action initiated by small firms will show a lower degree of visibility than those initiated by larger firms. Now we will discuss about how to measure competitive responses. Hypothesis 2a. Small firms will show a lower degree of responsiveness to competitive actions than their larger rivals. Hypothesis 2b. Small firms will be slower to announce responses than their larger rivals. Hypothesis 2c. Small firms will execute responses faster than their larger rivals. Hypothesis 2d. The responses of small firm will be less visible than those of their larger rivals. Assessed organizational performance using an index composed of two market-related performance measures: 1. Net market share change and percentage market share change. 2. Profit margin and total operating profit per revenue passenger mile. Data were gathered on the competitive moves of the 28 major airlines as having annual operating revenues of $100 million or more. Structured content analysis research method used in collecting the data through Aviation Daily, a 50-year-old industry journal. The results shows out that the small airlines more actively initiated competitive challenges and were speedy but low-key, even secretive, in executing their actions. They were also less likely and slower to respond when attacked and, contrary to expectations, their responses were more visible than those of their larger opponents. Deviations from group norms have performance for both large and small firms. The influence of top management team heterogeneity on firms' competitive moves. This paper examines the effects of top management team heterogeneity on firms' competitive behavior and ensuing organizational performance. The top management teams that were diverse, in terms of functional backgrounds, education, and company tenure, exhibited a relatively great propensity for action, and both their actions and responses were of substantial magnitude. A firm's competitive behaviors consist of its moves and counter-moves, or its actions and responses to adversaries' actions. The top team can be considered as the aggregate information and decisional entity through which competitive moves are made. These moves depend on the team's scanning of the environment, recognizing problems and opportunities, and interpreting other external stimuli, developing potential moves, negotiating, refining, and selecting moves, and implementing decisions. This paper examined the relationships between top management team heterogeneity and three major dimensions of a firm's actions and responses. 1. The firm's propensity to act, the magnitude of these actions, and the speed with which they are executed. 2. The firm's propensity to respond to adversaries' actions, the magnitudes of responses, and the speed of responses. Competitive action as creative initiatives. Proposition 1. Top management team heterogeneity is positively related to the firm's propensity. Proposition 2a. Top management team heterogeneity is positively related to the strategic significance of the firm's actions. Proposition 2b. Top management team heterogeneity is positively related to the noteworthiness of the firm's actions. Proposition 2c. Top management team heterogeneity is positively related to the scope of the firm's actions. Proposition 3. Top management team heterogeneity is negatively related to the firm's action execution speed. Competitive responses as included counterplay. Proposition 4. Top management team heterogeneity is unrelated to the firm's response propensity. Proposition 5a. Top management team heterogeneity is positively related to the noteworthiness of the firm's responses. Proposition 5b. Top management team heterogeneity is positively related to the scope of the firm's responses. Proposition 6a. Top management team heterogeneity is negatively related to the firm's response generation speed. Proposition 6b. Top management team heterogeneity is negatively related to the firm's response execution speed. Heterogeneity in organizational performance. Proposition 7. Top management team heterogeneity is positively related to overall performance improvements in a turbulent industry. Measures the competitive magnitude of actions and responses by using strategic significance, noteworthiness, and scope of a firm's actions, noteworthiness and scope of responses. Strategic significance was measured as the number of strategic actions, substantial investments in fixed assets, people, or structure the firm took in a year, divided by its total number of actions. Action noteworthiness was measured by the amount of industry attention accorded a move. Action scope was measured as the proportion of the firm's revenue base potentially affected by the action. For competitive speed, authors used three measures: action execution speed, responses generation speed, and responses execution speed. Action execution speed is the amount of time a firm took to execute an announced action. Response generation speed was measured as the amount of time a firm took to generate a response if it did so. Responses execution speed was the amount of time that a firm took to execute an announced response. To explore effects on organizational performance, authors used two measures: firm's market share change during the year, and the firm's change in profits during the year. The results showed out that the top management teams that were diverse, in terms of functional backgrounds, education, and company tenure, exhibited a relatively great propensity for action, and both their actions and responses were of substantial magnitude. Heterogeneous teams, by contrast, were slower in their actions and responses, and less likely than homogeneous teams to respond to competitors' initiatives. Thus, although team heterogeneity is a double-edged sword, its overall net effect on airline performance, in terms of changes in market share and profits, was positive.
That's our group presentation. Thank you for watching.